Imagine standing in a world ruled by kings, empires, and absolute power, a world where freedom is just a dream. Then from across the Atlantic, 13 small colonies rise against the greatest empire on earth. A war begins not just for land or power, but for an idea. This is the story of courage, betrayal, triumph in the birth of a nation. This is the story of the American Revolution. The year is 1765. Across the 13 British colonies in North America, life seems peaceful yet under the surface. Tension simmers. The British Crown, burdened by the cost of wars in Europe, especially the Seven Years' War, looks across the Atlantic for new revenue. The Parliament imposes taxes, first the Sugar Act, then the Stamp Act, demanding money from colonists who have no representatives in London. To the British, it's simple governance. To the colonists, it's tyranny. In taverns and meeting halls, fiery speeches echo. Men like Samuel Adams and Patrick Henry declare that liberty is under attack. Newspapers print bold headlines, "No taxation without representation." The Stamp Act riots shake Boston. Crowds burn effigies of tax collectors. British officials are harassed, their homes looted. For the first time, the colonies begin to act not as separate provinces, but as one people. But Parliament doesn't back down. New taxes arrive. The Townshend Acts, taxing glass, paper, and tea. Troops are sent to enforce order. Redcoats patrol the streets of Boston, their muskets gleaming under the lantern light. Then on a cold March night in the 1770, it happens. A confrontation turns deadly. Snowballs turn to stones, stones turn to bullets. When the smoke clears, 5 colonists lie dead. The Boston Massacre, as it's soon called, ignites outrage. Paul Revere's engraving spreads across the colonies, depicting British soldiers firing into a helpless crowd. Blood has been spilled, and though small, it marks the beginning of something irreversible. In 1773, Parliament makes one last mistake, the Tea Act. Designed to rescue the struggling East India Company, it gives them monopoly rights to sell tea directly to the colonies. The price is low, but the principle is clear: submission. The colonists refuse. On December 16, 1773, under moonlight, a group of men disguised as Mohawk Indians slip through the harbor. They climb aboard ships and dump 342 chests of tea into the icy water. The Boston Tea Party, an act of defiance heard across the world. London's response is swift and brutal. The coercive acts known in America as the Intolerable Acts close Boston Harbor, dissolve Massachusetts government, and send more soldiers. The colonies react with fury. For the first time, they see the British Empire not as protector, but oppressor. In 1774, colonial leaders gather in Philadelphia, the First Continental Congress. George Washington of Virginia, John Adams of Massachusetts, and Patrick Henry stand among them. They debate rebellion or reconciliation, independence or loyalty. "I am not a Virginian," Patrick Henry declares, "but an American." The Congress unites the colonies under one cause: resistance. Then in April 1775, the spark catches fire. British troops march out of Boston toward Concord to seize colonial weapons. But riders spread the alarm: "The British are coming!" At dawn on the village green of Lexington, armed colonists stand in their path. A shot rings out, no one knows who fired it, but it becomes immortal. The shot heard round the world. The British advance to Concord, only to be driven back by furious militia fire. As they retreat, farmers and blacksmiths ambush them from trees and stone walls. By nightfall, nearly 300 British are dead or wounded. The American Revolution has begun. Boston is soon surrounded by thousands of colonial militia. In June, they take position on Breed's Hill. The British attack in waves. Musket fire shatters the air. "Don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes," the Americans are told. When the smoke clears, the British hold the hill, but at terrible cost, over 1,000 casualties. The colonists have proven they can stand against the world's best army. Amid this chaos, the Second Continental Congress convenes. One man towers above the rest: George Washington. Dressed in his blue uniform, he is appointed Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army. His task is monumental: to turn a ragtag militia into a fighting force capable of challenging an empire. As the siege of Boston drags on, a bold plan emerges. A young bookseller named Henry Knox drags captured cannons from Fort Ticonderoga across hundreds of miles of snow and ice. When those guns are placed on the heights overlooking Boston, the British realize their position is hopeless. In March 1776, they evacuate the city. For the first time, Washington tastes victory, but the British will return in greater strength. That summer, a massive armada appears off New York, over 30,000 British troops, the largest force ever sent. Overseas, they crush Washington's inexperienced army in a series of brutal defeats. By autumn, New York City is in British hands. Washington retreats across New Jersey, his army shrinking by the day. Hope fades. Then on Christmas night, 1776, Washington makes his daring move. Through snow and ice, he leads his men across the Delaware River to attack a garrison of Hessian mercenaries at Trenton. The surprise is complete. Hundreds of enemy soldiers are captured. A week later, another victory at Princeton. These small triumphs rekindle a dying revolution. Thomas Paine captures the spirit of the moment. These are the times that try men's souls. His pamphlet, The American Crisis, spreads like wildfire, inspiring soldiers and civilians alike to endure. But Britain is not defeated. In 1777, they launch a new strategy to cut the colonies in half. General Burgoyne leads an army from Canada toward Albany, while another force moves from New York. But the plan collapses. At Saratoga, American forces surround Burgoyne. After fierce fighting, he surrenders his entire army. It's a turning point, the first major victory of the Revolution. And across the ocean, the world is watching. France, Britain's ancient rival, sees an opportunity. In 1778, King Louis XVI formally recognizes the United States and enters the war as an ally. French ships, supplies, and soldiers cross the Atlantic. The rebellion is now a global war. Back in America, Washington's army endures the harsh winter at Valley Forge. Snow blankets the camp. Soldiers are barefoot, starving, dying of disease, but they are not broken. A Prussian officer named Baron von Steuben drills the troops, instilling discipline and order. By spring, the Continental Army is reborn stronger, united, and ready. In 1778, British forces shift focus to the south. They capture Savannah, then Charleston, the worst American defeat of the war. Loyalists rally to the crown, but resistance grows fierce. Leaders like Nathaniel Greene, Daniel Morgan, and the legendary Swamp Fox, Francis Marion, wage guerrilla warfare through the swamps and forests. They strike fast, vanish into the night, and wear the British down piece by piece. In the north, Washington holds the line. Battles rage Monmouth, Newport, and countless skirmishes that test his patience and leadership. The war drags on. Supplies are short, morale low, and treachery strikes when Benedict Arnold, once a hero, betrays his country, attempting to hand over West Point to the British. His plot fails, but it wounds the revolution deeply. By 1781, both sides are exhausted. The British General Cornwallis moves his army to Yorktown, Virginia, seeking a base for resupply. Washington sees his chance. In secrecy, he marches his army south, coordinating with the French under General Rochambeau. At sea, Admiral de Grasse's fleet blocks the British escape. Yorktown is surrounded. For 3 weeks, American and French cannons pound the British lines. Night and day, thunder echoes. Trenches creep closer. When the final assault begins, soldiers storm the redoubts with bayonets and shouts of victory. On October 19, 1781, Cornwallis surrenders. The war is effectively over. As the British band plays "The World Turned Upside Down," Washington stands solemnly. After 6 long years, the impossible has happened. A group of farmers and rebels have defeated the most powerful empire in the world. 2 years later, in 1783, the Treaty of Paris is signed. Britain formally recognizes the independence of the United States. The new nation stretches from the Atlantic to the Mississippi River, vast, uncertain, and full of promise. When the war ends, George Washington does something almost unheard of. He resigns his command and returns home to Mount Vernon. The world expects him to seize power, to crown himself king. Instead, he walks away. This act of humility cements his legacy and sets a precedent that defines the Republic. The American Revolution was more than a war of muskets and cannons. It was a war of ideas, that government should be chosen by the people, that liberty is a right, not a privilege. These ideas echo beyond the 18th century, inspiring revolutions in France, Latin America, and beyond. But the revolution was also imperfect. Slavery remained. Native Americans lost lands. Women, though instrumental, were denied the equality they helped fight for. The nation born from revolution still had much to learn about freedom. Yet from those imperfections rose a lasting symbol, a belief that a people could rise against empire, that destiny could be rewritten. The American Revolution reshaped the world, politically, economically, and philosophically. It marked the beginning of the modern age of democracy. From Lexington's first shot to Yorktown's surrender, the American Revolution lasted 8 years. It cost thousands of lives. It created heroes, villains, and legends. But most of all, it created a nation born not of conquest, but of conviction, not of royal blood, but of human courage. And that, above all, is what changed the world. This was the American Revolution, 1775 to 1783. How America defied an empire. If you enjoyed this epic history, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more untold history deep dives. Comment below, which moment of the revolution do you think defined the birth of America? Until next time, this is History Reborn.